Hello, everyone. Nice to see you for our last concurrent set of sessions today. My name's Chris Maley. I'm the chair for this session on co-design, which I'm very excited to be here to share with you all. So we've got 4 speakers. They're going to speak for 20 minutes each. We'll do questions as we go. So each speaker will do questions within their 20 minutes. This is being live streamed and perhaps even recorded, so just bear that in mind if you ask any questions that you will be on a recorded mic. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tessa and Judith. They're talking about a project that I'm working on too, actually. The title of their presentation is Research with, Not for Consumers, Reflections on Co-Designing a Qualitative Study on Physical Health for People with Mental Illness. So,
thank you. Oh no. Oh, okay, yay. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. So our presentation is going to be about reflecting on the process of engaging consumers in the design of a consumer resource. So we're not going to talk so much about the resource itself, although we are running a workshop on that on Thursday at 12:30 that you're all invited to attend. But today we're just going to be talking about how consumers were engaged, when that worked and when that didn't work. So we've got co-design in our title, but many people in the consumer movement and also even in our little group believe that the standards for co-design are, like pure co-design is incredibly difficult to achieve, and we did the best that we could, and we're going to share those reflections with you so that maybe you can use them in your own projects or use them to inform kind of any initiative that you might be a part of going forward.
No, is this working? Yep. So yeah, when I agreed to do this presentation, my first words were, but I'm not sure it is true co-design. But I think sometimes we have to be willing to walk that journey. We might not be there yet, but we're working towards it. And I think that's okay too. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Tessa. I'm the project manager for this bit of research. We have a co-design group of which Judith Drake, my co-presenter, is a member, and we can't wait to share it with you.
And just, sorry, is Amrita here? Yeah, so she's on our co-design group, and I don't think there's anyone else from the co-design group here, but if there is she here though? I think she's at a different presentation. Yeah, cool.
Right. So the purpose of the research is to create a resource that will help improve the health gap in physical and mental health for people living with mental health concerns. So, so that's the goal.
And we're going to just assume that you understand what that gap is, because that's kind of what the entire conference is about. So we're not going to go into that.
And so the part of having, so it's a very broad kind of aim, and we weren't given much more detail than that, which is where the co-design group comes in, because they're able to kind of help fill in that detail a little bit, as well as our participants who took part in the research. Yeah, great. Do you want to say anything about that? Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about this one because I'm on the research team, so I am a consumer academic. I do have lived experience, but I don't have experience of physical health concerns, and I come from the research side, not the co-design team. So I'm going to talk about why we chose to do this co-design. And it's really because the people who we want to use this research should be the ones telling us what the research needs to do, what the resource should do. So it's, you need to actually have those people engaged for it to meet those base requirements. So that's kind of why we picked that methodology. And in doing that, the co-design group has done so much more to make the research process easier that I didn't anticipate. Like, I could come back to them with problems and say, we haven't recruited enough from this cohort, or, this has happened. And they would come up with a solution that I could then implement. And so in that way, the co-design group process has been meaningful because there's some decision-making but also because it, kind of makes my job a little bit easier. We're doing it as a team. Yeah, do you want to read the...
We got some quotes from different people on the group. So Lynn said it's been a process, but we've gone through bit by bit about what's necessary, what's missing, the impact that it's had on us. And if you have a short interview or a focus group, you can't work through all those issues. We've covered the stigma, discrimination, talking about it from a carer's perspective the other day. So there's a lot of detail and a lot more information that's been able to be gathered by doing it over a period of time. So we've done various things as a group. So we were involved with the literature review. So using, what's it called, Covenants?
Yeah, we use Covenants.
For any academics in the room, I was new to all this. But yeah, going through the different research, so including substantial assessment of existing resources, of which I have to say there weren't that many that made.
We identified 4 from academic literature and about 52 from grey literature.
Yeah, so also ethics application, so the development of essential study materials. So yeah, Tessa one day had me like drafting a letter to recruit GPs, and I'm like, that's not something you normally do when you're like on an advisory group. It's like this is actually being involved in the project. So that was a bit new. Recruitment pathways and I think you just talked before about, when you have trouble recruiting particular demographics. And then the initial sort of data analysis, and we've been going through doing sort of qualitative discussions of quotes and transcripts.
Oh no.
So I also have physical and mental health issues. One of the things I do to manage my physical and mental health issues is wear an emergency watch that apparently has a fall feature. Apparently waving your arms about sets off said feature. Either that or there's just something about this particular spot. That's slightly embarrassing. But anyway, over to you.
I also just wanted to share that it was actually really helpful to have the co-design group involved in all of these processes. We had something like 12,000 sources from our original literature review that needed title and abstract screening, and co-design group members probably did maybe half of that work, which meant that between all of us, we got it done. And it was like much faster. It was also a real opportunity, I think, to kind of, for me, I felt like I was kind of sharing a bit of that traditional research knowledge, but also I was learning a lot from the co-design group about how it sort of didn't work, because I'd say, we need to do it this way, or we need to stick to the criteria we've decided or whatever, because I wanted it to be all nice and reportable for a Q1, systematic review. I wanted that fancy publication out of it. But the co-design group were quite firm with me that wasn't really what, that didn't really prioritise the things that they saw as important. And so that was really interesting reflection for me. But also, there was a little bit of help in terms of the labour. So it was quite a nice relationship, I think.
And I'll just read a quote from Elsa, who's also on the group. I felt we were included in a fair bit of the process, which meant we learnt the focus of what was going on, and we were able to contribute at quite a few steps through the way, which was helpful.
Right, so we did have some discussions in the co-design group about why it feels close to co-design. But me and Judith were just reflecting, and I think the big one is that you guys tell me when I'm wrong, and tell us when it's not working, but in a way that's like, I don't know, like it's just really nice. Like it feels like I can respond to that effectively, and it's quite solution oriented. But I think that we're getting that feedback that things are wrong shows that the group believes that they can, they can have a say, and that say will be taken seriously, I hope.
So I'm just going to deviate from that because I'll make it up as I go along. I was just in Kath, and I've forgotten her co-presenter's name. Oh God, I've done it again.
Stop pulling over.
Yes, all right. It's one of those days. Sorry, I was in Kath, and I've forgotten the co-presenter's name. I'm sorry, workshop earlier about co-design. And there was a lot there around power dynamics. And I was sort of just reflecting on this particular group. And I think, I wonder if having can I call you an early career academic? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Sort of coordinating the group is actually an advantage rather than someone who's like, you know, a crusty old academic that like, I've been doing this for 40 years, I know how to do everything. That actually you're quite willing to admit what you don't know. And some of us consumers are quite willing to share what we do know. So I don't know, I can't speak for how Tessa experiences that, but from our point of view, it does actually feel like there is a bit of give and take, and that some of that power is perhaps a bit more shared.
Yeah, we were reflecting on this, and I think one of the challenges of what we've been doing is that most of the power has rested with the research team, because we hold the resources. I'm kind of engaged on the project more regularly than the co-design group, who meet about monthly. But it's about how I then use that power that makes it collaborative. Yeah.
But we do feel able to speak up, as she will attest to.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to read the quote, or should I read this one?
You can read that one.
Okay. So this is from Judith. It has been good to be involved in things like the lit review, because you don't normally get involved in those sorts of processes. So you just get given the results, and it's kind of by magic that this kind of happened. Whereas when you're involved with it, you can sort of see it develop a bit more. There's a bit more, I don't know if ownership's the right word, but kind of ownership of the work. So I think the key obstacles in kind of cultivating a co-design type project have been resourcing and the funding requirements. The funding was co-designed, but with different consumers to the ones that are now involved in the project. And so because of that disruption in continuity, the co-design group now haven't felt that the funding requirements were co-designed by them. So that's been something that we've had to work through. Recruitment as well. So sometimes that can be an obstacle, although we actually found it quite easy.
I think we've ended up with a reasonably diverse group. I think that was possibly more by luck than by design, but yeah.
Yeah. But I think that that's nice that it was by luck, because we didn't think like, oh, we need, you know, a certain amount of, you know, people from a cold background or a certain amount of women or whatever. It just kind of happened. So yeah, so that's been really lovely. Yeah, and then I think also one thing that's probably been difficult for me is communicating the requirements of, you know, like what I've written as the academic world, including in the ethics application, to the group in a way that makes them still feel empowered, that their perspective does matter. Because, you know, for me to get certain things through ethics, I need to abide by certain rules, or to get in that Q1 journal like was my dream, I need to follow certain rules, and then communicating those rules, and also communicating where that's coming from. So whether that's coming from me or from you know, or from these broader external forces, I think that actually does really matter, because that impacts the trust between the group and the coordinating researchers. Yeah. Did you want to add anything?
No, I guess there are certain requirements of something being an academic publication and or process, and as consumers we're quite happy to say, but why do you do it that way? Because that's what academics do. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I think where it has worked has been, yeah, so as I said, putting problems back to the group and they've resolved them, which has been so, really can't underestimate how, like, that's just been incredible. Sorry, I'm going to move over here so I can see it. Yeah, and I think, yeah, kind of like that continuity. Oh, thank you. Like keeping that continuity has been really helpful, because it's also helped us to build relationships where earlier on, you know, like I might have understood some people as maybe perhaps expressing some concerns, but then over time, because trust has developed, I might not experience them as concerns anymore. And also I've noticed that over time, people kind of tend to be less suspicious of me as a researcher. And that's been nice.
I think a key word there is actually time. That we've actually had quite a few meetings, and we've actually had times where we've gone, actually, no, we need more meetings, and no, you just need to kind of find the funding for this, because if you want us to do this, we need to do it well. And I think, as I say, it may not be true co-design, but if you want to call it co-design, it does actually take time, and you do actually have to be willing to invest the time into that. And I think, yeah, that's really important.
Yeah. All right. Well, look. sort of brings us to the end of the reflections that we wanted to share with you, because we did want to allow some time for questions. If you're interested in the resource, please come, as I said, to the workshop at 12:30 on Thursday. It's going to be kind of an open session where we'll talk a little bit about the data we've got on it so far, but we also will want to hear from you guys, and there's, we might even be able to put some of those suggestions into our broader pool of data. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. That was amazing. We have time for a few questions.
I didn't put your contact on.
It's all right, I can project, I think. Oh, right, yeah, oh, cool. Sorry. Really interested in when you put the co-design request out to the universe, did you have an idea of what skills the individual people with their lived experience possess? Like, were you not just looking for their, say, for their morbidities, but also their particular talents, like maybe drafting or project management or something? Did you have a second view?
Look, not really. I didn't really ask people for any of that kind of background stuff. We did make sure that they identified as having a mental health and a physical health challenge, but we didn't ask for any information about that, and we never have.
Most of us do have a bit of a background in consumer advocacy, which will be different flavours for different people. But yeah, so we do have some sort of experience in different things. But we've also, we've got people who've sort of worked as like consumer consultants, and people who've been on advisory groups. And so it's sort of, we've done similar stuff, but different stuff, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, but we do have some people as well who this is their kind of early, their kind of first consumer perspective role. So we got a mix, and I think that was partly some people we invited to, we kind of directly sent the EOI out to them, and then some people were recruited. We sent it out, we put it on social media. It went out through Being, and so we did get some people through that kind of public facing recruitment as well. But I'm also thinking, like, when we were inviting people, like in the early stages when we weren't sure that we were going to get enough EOIs, we were thinking across states. Like, we didn't want it to be too Victoria centric. So
What have you got against Victorians?
Yeah, well, that's because we knew because we know them, but like because we're all Victorians. But we were thinking from that perspective, but there wasn't, in terms of skills, I don't think that was a consideration.
Yeah, do you want?
I can.
Yeah.
So one of the really interesting things about this project was that when one of the lived experience members of the project, of the research team, who's doing a PhD, couldn't do as much hours as we were looking for, we could then go to the co-design group, and somebody from the co-design group could move over into the research team. So that made it much more fluid than it might otherwise have been, I think, don't you? It just gave a sense of breaking down some of those barriers, yeah.
I saw a quote from a carer. So it was carers and lived experience together in the group. What percentage, do you know, were carers and people with lived experience?
So the co-design group doesn't have any carers on it. We were, but we did interview carers as a part of the research, which I'll talk about more on Thursday. We did have trouble through that recruitment pathway. So we put it out on social media and through a few organisations. So initially the first pathway was that we asked consumer participants to give us a contact of someone who supports them, which didn't work. Then we put it out on social media and through an organisation, which also hasn't worked. And now we're trying another way. So the carer voice has been underrepresented in this research. We've been trying so hard to make that not the case. We did exceed our targets on talking to consumers as a part of the research and clinicians as well. So I'm not sure, yeah.
So that decision, though, about the composition of the co-design group was made because it's a resource for consumers explicitly. And so that was an intentional decision to have all consumers on a controversial decision, perhaps, but one that was intentionally made through a reflective process. Yeah. That's all we've got time for. Please join me in